why master plans? So, and also, what are they? So master plans, well, most of you probably already know what they are, and some of you may have a general idea. They really do, what a master plan is really does depend on the context that you use that word, but for EYP specifically, it is basically what it sounds like. It is a plan created in Excel or Sheets that contains all the information you could possibly need throughout a session. And its main aim is to basically organize everything into one place so that it can eliminate chaos and also help everyone kind of stay in sync with each other. So for a lot of people, Excel, I don't know if it's something I personally have, or it's just Excel for me was always the bane of my existence, especially in school. I just could not make sense of it. But when I was first introduced to Masterplans as an editorial assistant at a national session in Sweden, I realized how useful they can be and how much they can contribute when it comes to team dynamics and team management, which is why I also started utilizing them from there on as an editor at sessions. So the thing about media teams and also any official team really is that things can get very chaotic, especially in a big event, especially after a few days where everyone starts being very highly caffeinated and exhausted by everything that's going on. And that can also kind of create a sense of miscommunication and also chaos. I don't know if you guys have experienced that. Thumbs up who has experienced chaotic sessions. Yeah. So yeah, the logistics alone, especially for organizing teams, can create a lot of disconnect with people around and also create a communication breakdown. And I guess that's where master plans come in, because it can act as an anchor, especially for bigger teams. So for example, when I was an editor in Zurich in 2019, I was managing a 15-person team, 16 with me included, which is, it was big step, big decision for me to do that. And as you can understand, with a media team that size, there's several projects going on. You have sponsors you need to create content for. You have other conventional tasks such as committee photos and day-to-day content of the session. So orchestrating all of that can be very, very messy, especially if you don't have a plan. And luckily for me, I had the master plan. So yeah, it's for me, it's the best way to organize and prepare and also keep track of everything that's going on and have all the information you need in one place, including the session schedule, the committees, the official teams, the officials team, and also the projects that are going on within the media team. And all right, so I'll show you the master plan. Can you guys see it? Yeah, perfect. So it's detailed. So I'm just going to walk you through the elements. You have the general overview, which is the editorial team and also the clusters. So in my case, we had clusters. So my media team members were divided into 3 groups, all of which had their own unique identity and theme. And their projects were also revolving around that theme and topic. So this allowed us to kind of understand and also keep track of who was in what cluster, and also who was in what body group, as you can see here. Next, we had the sponsors spreadsheet. So you can see that there's the name, the output, the days that because most of this was actually products. So you can see which days these products would be present at the event. So we knew that during those days, someone had to take pictures of these products and create the content for the sponsors. And then you have other sponsors that were present throughout the entire event. So there's more flexibility. And if you were in my module before Masterplans, where we're discussing communication for sponsors, I think this is also partly what I was alluding to when it comes to transparency and also organization, especially for media team leaders, knowing what you're expected to create, when you're expected to create it, and also where you're supposed to share the content you've created is extremely important, especially if you're going to meet the expectations of the sponsor and also of the organizing team that has made that has dealt with the sponsor in the first place. Then we have general output, which is one of the first tabs that we added when creating this master plan. So you have media chores, meaning committee photos, everyday events, that kind of thing. Another thing I did as an editor is that my media team members were not attached to any committee, so they could take shifts and attend committees they wanted to, like they could volunteer their time. So everyone was allocated according to how they wanted to distribute their time. But yeah, you can see how we organized this information here and made sure that there was always someone allocated to these different events throughout the session, just to make sure that there would be coverage and there would be someone covering the event throughout the day. And then we also had media projects. I'm not sure if I can slide here. Okay. Yeah, so we had media projects, which also allowed us to keep track of everything before, during, and after the session. So you knew what the name of the project was, who was working on it, and also the deadline, which is pretty brilliant, especially when you have a really big team and things start to get a bit, messy. But yeah, something I'll cover later as well is that it gives people autonomy, and it also kind of gives them flexibility so that you're not telling them what they need to be doing. They are deciding that for themselves, and then everyone is aware of what they want to be doing with their time. But yeah, then we have the next tab, which is committee overview. Like I said, people were not allocated to specific committees. People were just volunteering in shifts. So you have the name of the committee, the chair name, and also who is covering that committee and what day. And again, people were responsible to update this and keep track of everything. Obviously, it can be a bit confusing if people are not on top of it, which is one of the main issues with master plans. But if they do, and if they are willing to participate in this, then it does take a lot away from the editor's plate, which is usually pretty full. And yeah, then we move on into the daily sections. So the CGO day, this is mostly so that people can understand where they are, because I cannot tell you how many times people will come up to me as an editor and be like, what are we supposed to be doing now? What's the schedule like? And, having that there, that it takes away that kind of questions. Here, you can see that we had the modules allocated, so people knew what their module was going to be and kind of, have expectations of what they were going to receive that day as a module. Again, the first day of the session, you could see the location, the activity, and also the module names. A thing that we added once the session began was the names of people. And we also color coded so that it would be based on the cluster people were in. So green was cluster 1, blue was cluster 2, and so on. And obviously the first day we didn't have much use of this, but then we would duplicate this every day and kind of create that kind of thing. So once we started moving into the the middle of the session, so day 2 to day 4, people started using this a lot more. So that's me, and then there's other people also utilizing the space that was created for them to create their own schedule. And I mean, the thing with master plans is that once you have the schedule in front of you, so you know there's coffee break at 3, then you know that you'll be able to work on your project at 3:15. And obviously you can see that some people didn't actually utilize the master plan, and that's completely okay. But the fact that it was there also helps other people to understand where everyone else is and what they're doing. I'm just gonna go briefly through here. Yeah, we did have a media takeover, so people were kind of having their own modules for delegates, which is pretty brilliant. And you can see how this kind of helped us organize so that everyone knew what everyone else was doing. And I mean, that's pretty much it. Yeah, the principles of a good master plan, according to me. So like you said, yeah, like you saw, I think a breakdown of the session schedule, overview of teams, daily overview of task allocation, duties and activities, but also the sponsor tabs are the main things that you should always consider adding to your master plan. And then output and projects, which wasn't as detailed in the specific example I showed, but which could always be a lot more detailed and comprehensive in other cases. And then other stuff like being accessible and keeping it up to date. Like I said, if you create the master plan and it takes you hours to do and you share it with everyone, but no one is taking the time to use it, but also keep it up to date. So if there's a schedule change or if there's a cancellation of a sponsor, someone needs to be on top of it. In my case, it was me. But you could always provide the responsibility to someone else who might be interested in learning more about master plans and so on. So yeah, I would say these are the main considerations and also the principles you should consider. So where do I start and when should I start? Well, the first question you need to answer for yourself is, do you actually need a master plan, or do you just want to make everything fancier and actually end up wasting precious time creating a very complicated sheet that you're not going to actually use? Sorry, water break for my throat. Okay, so yeah, first start with why. Why do you need a master plan, and how are you going to utilize it within your team? Is it actually needed? I think I mean, I'm a very big advocate for master plans, but I also think that there isn't always use for them, and people can utilize their time and energy in a different way if they don't think that a master plan is actually useful for them. Secondly, you need to determine your needs. So what do you want to get out of the master plan? What should the main elements be for your team? And also, what does your team themselves need? Like, you should ask them, is there something missing from this master plan? Is there anything you would like to see or add yourselves? Give them the flexibility, because if you're expecting them to utilize a master plan, then at least it should contain elements that they also want to have on there. Sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on. Yep. Okay. Then we have beginning with your team. So the first steps you can take in creating a master plan is adding in the essential stuff. So who your team is, the body groups, the projects they're working on. Even those few things can create a good master plan that can keep everyone kind of in sync with each other. You don't need to add the schedule, you don't need to add sponsors. You can add whatever you think is useful and relevant to you and your team. But yeah, start with internal elements and then move to the external. So the schedule, the sponsors, everything you would receive after like a few months, if not weeks, after the session preparation has begun. And then lastly, add as you go. So if you see that there's something missing, or if you see that something is not working for you, change it or add something else. Like, it doesn't have to be rigid, and it doesn't have to be the final product from the very beginning. You can adapt it and change it as you go. Yeah, So to Masterplan or not to Masterplan. Like I said, there's a lot of benefits, but there's also a lot of drawbacks. I can see yours is enjoying my my meme. Thank you. A little bit Shakespearean humor for you guys. The benefits obviously is that for me personally, a 16-person team was quite a big quite a big challenge, because obviously there's a lot of people, there's a lot of needs, there's a lot of projects. It can be chaos if you're not careful. So it does improve team management, and it does improve dynamics in the sense that you don't have to waste precious time trying to manage everyone and run after everyone, trying to understand what they're doing and trying to see if they're actually doing anything with their time. And it also changes the dynamics. So you're no longer having to kind of parent the media team members. They can take responsibility for themselves, and they can create a schedule for themselves, and they can also see what everyone else is doing. Which kind of leads into the next point, which is providing autonomy and letting people take charge of their schedules, which I've kind of covered quite a few times throughout this module, but I think it's definitely one of the biggest benefits. And I think it does help a lot in every context, media, organizing, and sharing. And then lastly, more organization, less chaos, or at least more organized chaos. It's not a perfect system, and it's definitely not a very simple system to have, but if you actually nail it and adapt it to how you need it to be overall, then it's definitely something that can definitely contribute positively to your team dynamics and also your performance as a team within the session. So other considerations is that it requires constant updating, which we've already covered. You do need to be on top of it, and you need to make sure someone is keeping track of everything, and that someone is doing small updates, like if there's a schedule change, if people are using the master plan, then they should also be aware there is a schedule change. And in order to do that, someone needs to change what's already included in the master plan. Then we have the first issue that we discussed, which is media teams may not be utilizing it as much. And I think the best way to approach this problem is that you also give them control over the master plan, not in the sense that they can edit the master plan, but in the sense that they can contribute their ideas of how the master plan should be. So if there are missing elements or tabs that they would like to see, or anything really that they require, then giving them that kind of that's not the word I'm looking for, but yeah, giving them that kind of power also, and showing that you trust them and they're not just expecting them to abide by your own kind of expectations and rules as a editor who is in a higher position. Then yeah, I think you do encourage them to take over. But also I think using the master plan before the session and encouraging others to do so, it gives them time to get accustomed to the master plan. It gives them time to familiarize themselves with the system you've created. And it just allows them to just kind of get used to the idea of having a master plan they can work with throughout the session. But yeah. Next point is that it can be overcomplicating and also not necessary. Just because someone uses a master plan when they're editing or head organizing a session doesn't mean you should. Well, head organizers usually do use the master plan because it's extremely essential, but for editors, I think there's not always a big need, especially if it's a regional session or a smaller a session that is not going to be like very long. So there's not going to be a lot of logistics within it. And lastly, which is obviously quite a not specific, quite obvious point, like everyone has different processes. Just because, for example, I love working with master plans doesn't mean everyone will. So my advice would be to just kind of test it out and see if it works for you, and also try to understand what other kind of approaches you can take to figure out what might actually help when you're in that position where you might need a master plan.